The galaxy thought humans were finished. But one world's revenge turned fear into a weapon no alien could survive. The galaxy believed that Earth was broken and finished a long time ago. The Council of Great Powers had pushed humans into a corner, and for decades it seemed as if the human race would only fade into dust. Alien fleets had blockaded the trade routes, and alien corporations had squeezed the last drops of resources from the blue planet. Every senator in the chambers of the Galactic Council treated the name of Earth like a joke. They said humans were a lesson for others, a warning of what happens when a young race challenges the old order. They laughed while entire cities on Earth starved. They turned their eyes away while smuggled drones patrolled the skies, and they whispered in private that humanity would soon beg for mercy. But humans never begged. In the ruins of old cities, people carried on with stubborn hearts. Broken highways became fields of crops, abandoned factories became hidden workshops, and under the ground of bombed suburbs, children learned lessons not only about math and science but about survival. The stories of the great humiliation were told to them again and again, not to bring shame, but to plant a seed of fire in their hearts, so that they would remember what was taken and what must be earned. Back the Council thought that the silence of Earth was the silence of defeat, but it was the silence of patience. Laura Bennett walked through the dimly lit corridors of a facility buried under the mountains of North America. The air smelled of metal and oil, and the hum of generators followed her as she stepped into the command chamber. The walls were lined with screens, and in the center was a wide table made of dark glass. It glowed with projections of alien fleets drifting like cold predators in space. Her eyes stayed fixed on the largest cluster of ships circling one of the outer colonies. She had seen those ships years ago, hovering over Earth when she was still a young officer. She remembered the shadows they cast across her city. She remembered the thunder of orbital strikes, and she remembered the silence after the fire, when she dug through rubble and found no voices left to answer her own. That silence never left her. Ethan Carter leaned against the table beside her. His arms crossed his, dark hair falling carelessly across his forehead. His eyes, however, were sharp like a man who could already see where the game would end. He was known among those who still fought in secret as a strategist who never thought in straight lines where aliens used rules and logic. He twisted paths and made chaos his ally. He tapped his finger against the projection of the alien fleet and smiled a tired but dangerous smile. "You know what they call us now," he said. "They call us the broken ones, but I think we are something else. We are the waiting ones." Laura did not look away from the ships. Her voice was steady, not broken, not fearful. "We waited long enough," she said. "We built. Long enough. The Council thinks Earth is weak. They think we are begging. For scraps, they think we are finished." She finally turned to Ethan, and in her eyes was not the look of a defeated woman, but of someone who had already chosen the path. "We are not finished. We are sharpening, and when the blade is ready, we will cut through all of them." Above ground, the world looked quiet. Farmers tilled the soil. Soldiers guarded dusty roads. Traders carried goods between towns. But beneath that mask, entire networks of resistance pulsed with life. The resistance was not chaos. It was not scattered. It was organized, carefully hidden behind the mask of ruin. They built stealth ships from the remains of fallen satellites. They crafted plasma disruptors from stolen alien tech. They dug deep under oceans to test new engines. Without being seen beyond the rim of the galaxy, small human colonies who were believed to be struggling instead grew shipyards hidden behind asteroid belts. There was no grand announcement, no banners raised, only preparation. Ethan walked across the room and pulled up another projection showing secret facilities spread like sparks across the galaxy. "We are not as weak as they think," he said softly. "They believe our fleets are gone, but we have fleets waiting in shadows. They believe our colonies are starving, but those colonies built weapons while the Council looked away. They believe we are fractured, but we are more united than we have ever been before, because now every human remembers, every human carries the scars." Laura placed her hand on the table. "For years we kept silent. For years we let them believe we were crawling. But now the time has come," she said. "The first strike must remind them that humans never forget. In the far reaches of space, hidden beyond nebula clouds, a group of young pilots trained inside stealth ships that shimmered like pieces of night. Commander Daniel Brooks stood at the edge of the training deck, his uniform simple, his boots worn, but his voice cut sharp through the air. Every maneuver, every angle, every risk was drilled into the pilots, not just as skill but as instinct. When the time came, they would not fight like aliens. They would fight like humans with unpredictability and relentless will. Daniel had once been on a council prison ship. He had seen how the guards laughed at human prisoners. He had heard them whisper that humans would soon die out. He had stared at the cold walls of his cell and promised himself that if he ever walked free, he would return with fire. Now he stood watching. His pilots bend their ships in ways alien commanders would never expect. Back on Earth, children sat in classrooms that were half destroyed. Yet full of life, teachers spoke of history, not as a dead subject, but as a weapon. They told stories of how humanity had once crossed oceans, how they had endured plagues, wars, disasters, and yet kept standing. They reminded the young that the Council was powerful, but not invincible. Nothing was invincible to a human who refused to give up. The galaxy did not see these things. They only saw quiet villages and ruined towers. They did not hear the quiet speeches at night by firelight, when families swore that one day they would rise again. They did not see the pilots who flew through asteroid fields, practicing impossible turns, or the engineers who welded in silence, their faces lit by sparks. They did not see Laura standing in command with fire in her voice, or Ethan laying out traps like a master of chess. They saw nothing, and so they laughed, louder. But the louder they laughed, the more dangerous the silence became. In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, senators from great empires leaned back in their seats as they spoke of Earth. One tall-scaled senator declared, "The humans are finished, they can barely feed themselves." Another with shimmering wings added, "They are no longer a concern. We should focus on the disputes with the Trilon Union." The chamber echoed with agreement. The name of Earth passed like an afterthought. Word of mockery, what none of them knew was that beneath their very noses, human spies had already mapped their fleets, their outposts, their hidden stores of weapons. Every weakness was written down, waiting for the signal. Ethan stood one night on a cliff outside the mountain facility. The stars stretched endlessly above him. He closed his eyes and remembered the night when those stars were lit, not with beauty, but with fire. When alien warships had rained destruction across Earth, he opened his eyes again and whispered into the wind, "The day is coming, and when it comes, they will tremble." The galaxy thought humanity had fallen, but humanity had only been waiting with patience, sharpened into steel, waiting with pain forged into strength, waiting with silence that would soon break into thunder, and when that thunder came, no world would forget it. The alien powers still believed humanity was scattered and broken, but they did not understand what truly lived inside human hearts. They believed the silence of Earth was weakness, but it was discipline. They thought the empty skies above Earth meant surrender, but those skies hid secret engines waiting to rise again, far away in hidden factories. Humans had taken old wrecks of council ships and stripped them down piece by piece, learning how their systems worked, and then building something new with what little they had. They did not have endless resources like the empires of the Council, but they had something sharper. They had imagination. Engineers turned scraps into weapons. Miners smuggled metals through asteroid tunnels to fuel. The hidden shipyards and scientists who once worked in universities now worked in silence underground, driven not by pay or power, but by vengeance. Every failure became a lesson. Every obstacle became another way to grow stronger. Ethan Carter stood in front of a group of young officers, their uniforms plain but their eyes sharp. He paced slowly, his voice carrying calm weight. "The Council believes humans are finished." He said, "They believe we cannot fight back. They believe our silence means we are begging. But what they do not see is this: we have never been more united than we are now." He stopped and looked each of them in the eyes. "Do you understand why? Because we all lost something. We all carry the scars, and scars do not weaken us. Scars remind us of who we are." Among the officers, a young woman named Claire Adams tightened her fists. She had watched her parents die when a council patrol fired on her village. She had carried her little brother through burning streets and swore that She would never forget when Ethan's words reached her. She felt that same fire rise again. Humanity was not going to die out. Humanity was preparing to strike back. Captain Laura Bennett studied the reports from secret colonies at the edge of known space. These colonies had long been ignored by the Council. They were considered too small, too weak to matter. But in those quiet places, humans had built great machines under the shadows of rocks. Entire shipyards stretched under asteroid shells, powered by stolen reactors. Ships black and sharp like blades were born in those places, and when Laura read the reports, she knew they would be the teeth of humanity's revenge. At night, when the command center was quiet, Laura sometimes walked alone. Through the dark halls, she would run her hand along the cold steel walls and remember the sound of bombs falling when she was younger. She remembered her father's voice telling her to stay hidden while the sky burned. She never saw him again, but she carried him with her in every decision she made. Now she was no longer the scared child. She was the captain preparing the strike that would echo across the galaxy. The Council still treated humans like a fading race, their spies reported. Hunger riots and ruined cities. They saw humans trading scraps for food and believed nothing more was happening. They did not see the stealth ships training in silence. They did not see the weapons hidden under ocean floors. They did not see Laura and Ethan drawing up plans that no alien mind could predict. In the city ruins of New Chicago, people walked among broken towers. But beneath the streets, engineers had built laboratories filled with glowing engines and weapons that pulsed with quiet energy. One of the scientists was Daniel Wright, an old man with hands rough from years of work. He often told the young builders around him, "Do not be ashamed of what we lost. Be proud that we still build with nothing in our hands. That is what makes us human everywhere across Earth." The same spirit lived in farmers who planted seeds in dead soil, soldiers who trained with old rifles until their hands bled, children who studied by candlelight so they could one day join the resistance. It was not wealth that fueled them. It was the memory of humiliation and the promise of vengeance. Ethan once stood before a group of new recruits in a bunker lit only by lanterns. He told them, "Aliens think strength is in numbers, but strength is not numbers. Strength is knowing you cannot lose, because if you lose, everything you love will die. We are fighting not just to win, but because there is no other path." Every recruit listened in silence, then raised their fists together in a vow. Humanity would never bow again. While humans trained in secret, the Council wasted time arguing in their chambers. Some senators warned that humans should be monitored more closely, but most laughed away the idea. One counselor with silver skin said they are too busy starving to fight. Another replied they have no fleets left. Another added they are broken. But what they could not see was that those very words were building the greatest mistake they would ever make. In hidden star systems, human ships tested, their engines pushing them faster than alien scientists thought possible. Some of the tests ended in explosions, but even those failures were victories, because each failure taught them how to go further. When one ship vanished in a jump, its wreckage was studied until a new design was made safer and faster. Humans had little, but they made use of everything. Laura received a message one evening from a small colony beyond the rim. The message was short, only 4 words. "We are ready now." When she read those words, she felt a chill, not of fear, but of anticipation, because she knew the day was coming, the day when silence would turn to thunder. She walked into the strategy room where Ethan stood waiting. He looked at her, and without speaking, she nodded. He smiled faintly, then turned to the glowing map of the galaxy. He pointed at a sector near the mining world of Joran. "Their fleet is stationed there." He said, "They expect no resistance. They believe we cannot even reach them." Laura answered, "Then we show them they are wrong." Ethan's grin widened. "This will be the first cut, and the galaxy will bleed." Across the hidden colonies, pilots received their orders. They sat in their black ships, engines humming softly, and for the first time in decades, human fleets moved together, not as scattered rebels, but as one united force. Daniel Brooks looked at his pilots and said quietly, "Today the galaxy remembers our name." The strike was prepared with silence. No grand speeches, no announcements. Only steady breath and steel hearts. Humanity had waited long enough, and now the waiting was over. The mining world of Joran had always been quiet. It was a place where alien workers dug deep into the ground for metals that fed the Council's fleets, and no one expected anything unusual to happen there. The local commanders believed their ships were untouchable. They carried banners of the Council with pride, and when they looked down at the laborers, they saw only fear. The Council fleet orbiting Joran numbered dozens of cruisers with shields that had never been tested in real battle against equals. Their captains grew lazy and arrogant. They believed no enemy would ever dare challenge them. But in the cold dark beyond the edge of the system, shadows moved. The first human fleet had arrived, and they did not announce themselves. Their ships were black shapes cutting through the void, designed to hide from scanners and drift like ghosts until the moment came. Commander Daniel Brooks stood at the bridge of his vessel, his hands resting on the armrest as his crew waited in silence. Before them hung the Council fleet, glowing with careless pride. Daniel's voice broke the silence, steady and calm. "It is time." The human ships slid closer, cloaked by the darkness of space, until they reached firing range. The alien scanners finally blinked, with warnings, but it was too late. Plasma disruptors roared to life, slicing across the shields of the nearest cruiser. The ship shuddered and tore apart in an explosion that lit the void. Alien voices filled the comm channels, shouting confusion and disbelief. "What weapons are these? How did they get here?" One shouted. "Impossible," another screamed before static swallowed his voice. Daniel gave the order to press forward. Human ships darted with sharp precision, striking from angles. No alien commander had considered the Council fleet returned fire, but their shots flew wide, hitting nothing. The human vessels were smaller, faster, unpredictable. Where aliens fought with rigid formations, humans fought like predators, darting, striking, fading into darkness. Again, one by one, alien ships exploded, their captains never understanding how they were being undone so quickly. On the ground below, workers looked up from the mines as the sky lit with fire. Some of them had never even heard the word human before. They only knew the Council as their masters. But now they saw the mighty fleet burning above them, and a whisper passed through the workers. Something had changed. The galaxy was no longer the same. Back on the bridge, Daniel stood firm as reports came. In another cruiser destroyed another squadron, broken. He heard the fear in alien transmissions as they cried out for reinforcements, but none would come. The Council had never expected to need them. Not here, not against humans who were supposed to be finished. One alien commander tried to rally his men, shouting, "Hold formation. They are nothing but scavengers." Yet his words died when a human torpedo tore through his flagship, splitting it apart in seconds. Within minutes, the battle that should have been easy for the Council turned into slaughter. Human ships did not just attack, they hunted. They moved with instinct, born from centuries of fighting. Impossible odds on their homeworld. Every strike was calculated, every maneuver built on lessons of survival. The aliens could not adapt because they had never faced an enemy that fought without fear. When the last alien ships tried to retreat, they found their path blocked. Human warp interdiction fields snapped into place, trapping them like prey. The survivors screamed across open channels, demanding mercy, demanding explanations, but none came. Daniel's voice was the only one to answer, cold and sharp. "Remember this, humans are not finished." Then silence followed as the final blasts tore through the last of the fleet. When it was done, the void was filled with wreckage, pieces of ships that had once represented the Council's might, now drifting like broken bones. Daniel looked at his crew. Some of them stared wide-eyed, unable to believe what they had done. But he spoke firmly. "This is only the beginning. The galaxy will know our name again." News of the destruction of the Joran fleet spread faster than light. Smugglers carried whispers, merchants told stories in shadowed bars, workers on other mining worlds passed the tale in secret voices. At first no one believed it. How could humans do such a thing? How could they destroy an entire Council fleet? But soon there were survivors, their ships limping back, scarred and broken, and their testimonies made the truth undeniable. It was humans. Humans had returned, and they were no longer crawling in the dirt. In the chambers of the Galactic Council, senators shouted over one another, demanding answers, demanding explanations. How had humans built ships? How had they struck so suddenly? One senator declared, "This is only a small act of rebellion. They cannot stand against our full force." Another hissed back, "Then why did our fleet vanish in minutes?" The chamber shook with panic and denial. But no matter how they argued, fear had already planted its roots. Laura Bennett received the reports on Titan in the command center. She read them silently, her eyes narrowing. Ethan stood beside her, his usual grin sharper than ever. They never saw it coming, he said softly. And they still do not understand. They think this was luck, but it was not luck. Laura replied, it was only the first strike. Ethan leaned closer and his voice dropped low. Then let us plan the next. Because when the next comes, the galaxy will tremble. On the streets of Earth, the news spread through whispers, first among soldiers, then among families. Soon it reached the children, who repeated it as if it was a story from legend. Humans had defeated the Council fleet. Above Duran, for the first time in decades, people walked with their heads a little higher. They looked to the stars not with fear, but with hope. The Council tried to cover up the truth, declaring the battle a misunderstanding or an accident. But the truth was stronger than their lies. Every traveler, every merchant, every smuggler carried the story further, until no corner of the galaxy was untouched. And everywhere it spread, it carried with it a seed. If humans could strike back, maybe others could too. Ethan knew this better than anyone. The strike was not just about revenge. It was about showing the galaxy that the Council was not invincible, that those who had been beaten into silence could rise again. And when he looked across the map of Council territories, he saw not just enemies but opportunities, because the fear that had begun at Duran would soon spread, and with that fear, humanity would build a storm. The galaxy had never seen such a silence before, a silence that carried weight heavier than 1,000 suns. After the devastating battles that had already unfolded, many alien factions began to wonder if humanity had crossed a line that could never be undone. Some whispered that the humans had awakened something ancient in themselves, something that could not be reasoned with, something primal and unyielding. The fleets that had been crushed were not just numbers on a report. They were symbols of arrogance and cruelty that had finally met their end. And now entire empires trembled in fear, unsure of who would be next. Captain Ethan sat in the command chair of the horizon, staring at the faint glow of stars across the view screen. He had aged in these months of constant battle, his once sharp features now shadowed with exhaustion and burden, yet his eyes carried a fire that none could ignore. Beside him, Commander Olivia leaned against the console, quietly studying her captain. She knew he carried guilt for every life lost, human and alien alike. But she also knew that he carried a purpose far larger than himself, a purpose no one else in the galaxy could fulfill. Ethan finally spoke, his voice calm yet unshakable. The galaxy thinks we are monsters, but we are not. We are survivors. They brought war to our doorstep, and now they fear the price, and that fear is only the beginning. His words hung in the air, steady and cold, and every officer on the bridge felt the weight of them. Meanwhile, in the hidden chambers of the Galactic Council, chaos unfolded. Delegates from once mighty empires shouted over one another, each demanding answers, each accusing the others of provoking humanity too far. Some begged for peace talks, but their voices were drowned out by those calling for retribution. They could not accept that fragile humans from a death world could stand against fleets that had ruled the stars for centuries. But deep down, many already knew the truth. They had underestimated humans, and now the balance of the galaxy had shifted forever. The council chamber, filled with towering figures of alien power, was no longer a symbol of unity. It had become a pit of fear, and fear made them weak. One alien leader, tall and cloaked in silver, finally rose above the noise and said, "Do you not see it? Every strike we deliver only makes them stronger. Every fleet destroyed by their hands only adds to their legend. The galaxy trembles not because of their weapons, but because of their will. You cannot kill willpower." His words silenced the room for a moment, but only for a moment, because fear quickly turned to rage. Plans for more retaliation began forming, but the doubt in their eyes betrayed them. Back on Earth, cities that had once been quiet now burned with a new light. They were not celebrating, nor were they mourning. They were preparing. Factories roared as machines forged ships larger and stronger than ever before. Soldiers trained not only with weapons, but with a mindset forged in survival. Families said their goodbyes, sending loved ones into the void of space with hope and dread tangled together. Humanity had changed. No longer was Earth simply a blue dot in the galaxy. It had become a storm, and every human knew it. Even children understood that the universe was no longer a safe place, and they carried that knowledge like armor. Ethan visited one of the training camps before their next mission. He walked among rows of young men and women, some barely old enough to be soldiers, but their eyes were filled with determination. A young recruit stopped him and asked, "Captain, will we win?" Ethan paused, looked at the boy, and answered, "Winning isn't about destroying them. It's about making sure they can never take from us again. And yes, we will win." Those words spread like fire, repeated again and again until they reached every soldier's heart. The next mission came swiftly. Reports arrived that an alien coalition had gathered on the edge of human-controlled space. They believed that by uniting, they could crush humanity in one decisive strike. But Ethan saw through their plan. They had not gathered to strike. They had gathered out of desperation, hoping to convince themselves that together they stood a chance. The Horizon and a small fleet were sent to intercept. The battle that followed was unlike any before. The alien coalition unleashed wave after wave of firepower, their numbers stretching across the void. But humanity did not flinch. Every shot was answered, every maneuver countered. What shocked the aliens most was not the power of human weapons, but the way humans fought. They adapted faster. They used every scrap of knowledge, every mistake of the enemy. It was as if humanity was learning and evolving with each passing second, turning fear into strength. Ships that should have fallen kept moving. Soldiers who should have broken kept pushing forward. The coalition began to crumble, not because their ships were weak, but because their hearts faltered. In the middle of the chaos, Ethan made a daring move. He ordered the Horizon deep into enemy lines, a maneuver so reckless that even his own officers questioned it. Olivia's voice was sharp with concern. "Ethan, this is madness. We won't make it through." But Ethan only replied, "They need to see it. They need to understand why they will never break us." With precision and fury, the Horizon tore through the enemy lines, destroying their command vessel in one final strike that shattered their coordination. The coalition fleet broke apart, scattering into the void, their courage shattered along with their leaders. Humanity had not just won another battle. They had sent a message. News of the victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For some it was a story of horror, for others a legend of defiance. The Galactic Council once again convened, but their arguments were no longer about how to defeat humanity. Now the question was how to survive them. Whispers of surrender began to circulate, whispers of treaties and desperate bargains, yet even those whispers carried fear, because no one truly knew what humanity wanted. Did they seek peace or did they seek revenge? The answer remained locked in the hearts of captains like Ethan and commanders like Olivia, and the galaxy trembled in anticipation. As the Horizon returned home, Ethan stood alone in his quarters staring out at the stars. He whispered quietly to himself, words only he could hear. "We didn't start this war, but we will end it, and when we do, the galaxy will never forget." The stars shimmered back at him, silent witnesses to a storm that had only just begun. The stars above the Horizon seemed calm, but everyone on board knew the calm was only an illusion, a brief pause before another storm. Humanity had carved its place into galactic history with fire and iron, yet the battles that lay ahead would be greater than anything they had faced before. Captain Ethan sat in his chair, silent as reports came in. Entire alien empires had begun fortifying their borders, desperate to keep humans out, while others whispered in secret about joining them, hoping to avoid the wrath that had shattered so many fleets. The galaxy was trembling, and in that trembling humanity found strength. But Ethan also knew the price was mounting. He thought of the soldiers they had lost, the cities scarred by war, and the families waiting back home, carrying both pride and sorrow. War had made them legends, but it had also stolen their innocence. Commander Olivia approached quietly, carrying a data pad. "The Council has sent another message," she said, her tone heavy with disdain. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Another threat?" She shook her head. "Not exactly. They're asking for a truce." The word hung in the air like a fragile glass ready to shatter. Ethan leaned back, his expression unreadable. "A truce after all this? Do they think we'll just forget the fleets they sent against us? The billions who suffered because of their greed?" Olivia lowered her voice. "Maybe they're afraid, Ethan. Maybe they finally realize they can't beat us." He didn't answer right away. He looked out at the stars where countless ships had burned and then said, "Fear doesn't erase what they've done. Fear doesn't bring back the lives we've lost. A truce is only useful if it means something real." His words were steady, but Olivia could see the conflict behind them. Ethan wanted peace for his people, but he also carried the weight of justice, and justice demanded a price. Far across the galaxy, the Galactic Council met in shadows. Their chamber, once a symbol of unity, now reeked of fear and betrayal. Some members argued for total surrender, their voices trembling as they admitted that humanity had become unstoppable. Others raged against the idea, swearing that one final alliance could still crush Earth if they combined their strength. But even as they shouted, they could not hide the dread in their eyes. The humans had not only fought with weapons, they had fought with something the Council could never understand: unyielding spirit. No matter how many ships fell, no matter how many battles raged, humanity kept standing. One counselor, a reptilian figure with scars across his face, spoke words that silenced the chamber. "You do not defeat those who do not fear death. You do not destroy those who see every loss as fuel to fight harder. These humans are not like us. They are something different, something dangerous." His warning was met with silence because deep down everyone already knew it was true. Back on Earth, the people were not blind to what was happening. They knew the galaxy feared them, and in that fear they saw opportunity. Factories worked day and night, building fleets that stretched further into the stars. Families who once dreamed of quiet lives now prepared their children for service, because they understood this war was not just about survival anymore. It was about settling the score. Ethan visited one of the massive shipyards orbiting Earth. Thousands of workers moved like ants across steel giants being forged in the void. He walked the corridors and saw the determination in their faces. They were not afraid. They were ready. An old worker, his hands scarred from years of labor, stopped Ethan and said, "Captain, make them remember us. Make them remember Earth." Ethan simply nodded, but those words burned into him, another reminder of the weight he carried. The Horizon's next mission was not to fight, but to deliver a message. They traveled into neutral space where a council envoy had agreed to meet. It was a trap and everyone knew it, but Ethan went anyway. The Horizon dropped out of warp near the meeting point, its hull gleaming with scars from past battles. Across from them, a massive alien cruiser waited, its guns locked and ready. The air on the bridge was tense, every officer ready for combat. But Ethan stood calm, as if daring the enemy to make the first move. The communication channel opened, and a council delegate appeared on the screen, his voice dripping with false courtesy. "Captain Ethan, we meet at last. The council wishes to speak of peace." Ethan's gaze was hard, unblinking. "Peace is not given. It is earned. You brought war to us. You killed our people. You burned our worlds. Tell me, why should humanity believe a single word you say?" The delegate stammered, his carefully rehearsed words faltering under Ethan's stare. Finally, he whispered, "Because we fear you." Those words were the truth, stripped of pride, and everyone on the Horizon heard them. But fear alone was not enough. Even as the envoy begged for talks, Ethan knew the council was still plotting, still building weapons in secret, still waiting for one chance to strike. Humanity could not afford to trust them, not yet. Ethan cut the transmission and ordered the Horizon to turn away. The alien cruiser shadowed them for a moment, then broke off, unwilling to test its luck. Olivia turned to Ethan. "So what now?" Ethan's reply was simple. "Now we show them what fear really means." His voice was not cruel, but it carried a weight that chilled even his own crew. In the weeks that followed, humanity launched a campaign unlike any the galaxy had seen. They struck not with reckless fury, but with precision. They dismantled enemy outposts, not just destroying them, but exposing the corruption and lies of the Council for all to see. Planets under alien rule began to question their leaders. Whispers spread among the oppressed, whispers that humanity was not only a terror but also a symbol of resistance. For the first time in centuries, empires that had ruled with iron claws began to crack from within. And as those cracks spread, humanity pushed harder. The galaxy watched in silence as humans settled the score, not with endless slaughter, but with a relentless will that could not be broken. Ethan stood on the bridge one night staring at the map of stars that stretched before them. Each light was a story, each world a memory of what had been lost and what had been won. He knew the war was far from over, but he also knew the galaxy was changing, and humanity was at the center of that change. The Council feared them, the empires despised them, but none could stop them. For the first time in galactic history, the balance of power belonged not to the oldest empires, not to the mightiest fleets, but to the people of Earth. And as Ethan whispered to himself, The words carried through the silent bridge. We are not here to be forgotten. We are here to be remembered. The galaxy had grown quieter, but it was the kind of silence that came before the storm. Every empire, every counselor, every fleet commander knew that the war was reaching its final stage. Humanity had risen from a single world at the edge of the stars and turned into a force that none could ignore. Their victories had shaken the foundations of the oldest powers. Their determination had spread fear across planets that once believed themselves untouchable. Yet as the Council gathered its last strength preparing one final move, humanity too prepared for the endgame. The Horizon, scarred and battered from countless battles, led the charge into the unknown once more. Captain Ethan stood tall on the bridge, his hands resting on the console as if steadying not just himself but the entire weight of humanity's destiny. Commander Olivia stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the screen where stars shimmered like sparks against a dark void. She whispered almost to herself, "They think this will be the end." Ethan answered quietly but firmly, "It will be, just not the way they hope." The Galactic Council's plan was desperate but dangerous. They had gathered what remained of their fleets, pulling warships from every corner of the galaxy, binding together empires that had once been enemies. Never before had such a force been assembled, and they believed that by sheer numbers they could crush Earth once and for all. They named it the Final Armada, a swarm of steel and fire meant to bury humanity under its weight. But what they did not understand was that numbers meant nothing to those who had already faced extinction. When the Horizon sensors picked up the fleet stretching across the void like a wall of doom, the crew did not flinch. They tightened their grips, steadied their hearts, and prepared to fight. Ethan stood before his officers and spoke, his voice calm but carrying the power of every human who had suffered, every soul who had been lost. They think they can end us here. They think fear will break us. But we have never fought for survival alone. We fight for our families, for our homes, for the right to exist without chains. Remember why you are here. Remember what they tried to take from us. Today we do not fight to live. We fight to make sure they never forget who we are. His words struck like lightning through the crew, filling them with a fire no weapon could extinguish. The battle began with a roar. The Council's fleets poured forward, a storm of plasma and missiles lighting up the darkness. Human ships answered with precision, weaving through the chaos like predators in the hunt. The Horizon led from the front, tearing into enemy lines with a ferocity that seemed almost unreal. Explosions rippled across the void. Ships broke apart, debris scattered like falling stars. For hours, the two forces clashed, and the galaxy itself seemed to tremble under the fury of it. Yet still the humans did not falter. Every ship destroyed was answered with vengeance. Every loss only pushed them harder. The alien commanders began to realize the truth. They were not fighting an army, they were fighting a spirit, a force of will that could not be measured in ships or soldiers. At the height of the chaos, the Council revealed their hidden weapon, a colossal warship built in secret, larger than anything humanity had ever faced. Its cannons blazed, tearing through human lines, scattering ships like dust. For a moment, fear touched even the bravest hearts. But Ethan did not hesitate. He ordered the Horizon forward, straight into the path of the monster. Olivia's eyes widened in shock. "Ethan, that thing will tear us apart." But Ethan only said, "Then let it try." With deadly precision, the Horizon darted through the storm of fire, weaving past blasts that could have ended them in an instant. The crew worked as one, every hand steady, every mind focused. They struck the warship where it was weakest, tearing open wounds with relentless strikes. The giant roared with fury, but it could not match the speed and will of the Horizon. Finally, with one last barrage, the warship's core ignited, exploding in a firestorm that lit the void brighter than a sun. Silence followed, broken only by the gasps of those who had witnessed it. The destruction of the Council's weapon shattered the Final Armada. Ships began to break formation. Commanders panicked, and the once mighty fleet dissolved into chaos. Humanity pressed forward not with cruelty but with certainty. They dismantled the Armada piece by piece until the survivors fled into the darkness. For the first time in history, the Galactic Council had been broken, their fleets destroyed, their power shattered. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy understood a new truth. The humans had not only survived, they had won. Ethan stood on the bridge, his face lit by the fading glow of the battlefield. He looked at his crew, at Olivia, at the tired but unbroken soldiers who had followed him through hell itself. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the silence like a promise. It's over. The score is settled. Yet even as he spoke, he knew the war had left scars that would never fade. Humanity had changed forever. They were no longer just children of Earth. They were the storm that had shaken the galaxy, and the galaxy would never forget them. Far across the stars, whispers spread among alien worlds. Some spoke in fear, calling humans destroyers. Others spoke in awe, calling them saviors. But all agreed on one thing. The humans had settled the score and the galaxy trembled because of it. On Earth, lights filled the skies as people celebrated, but there was no arrogance in their joy. They remembered the cost, they honored the fallen, and they prepared for the future. For humanity knew the galaxy would always be dangerous, but they had proven something eternal. They would never be broken, they would never bow. And as the horizon drifted silently through the stars, Ethan whispered words no one else could hear. We were underestimated. We were pushed to the edge. And from the edge we rose. Let them remember this day. Let them remember us forever. The stars shined quietly in reply, bearing witness to a story that would be told for generations. Humanity had settled the score, and the galaxy would tremble for centuries to come.